Hi everyone, thanks for joining. Hope you're all well. I'm just going to wait a minute or two just to see if more people join. Great, I can see more people are joining now. Can everyone hear me? Can someone just post that they can hear me? Can you hear me okay? I can see the view. Okay, perfect. I can see that you can hear me. So thanks for joining everyone. I hope you're all well. Just to introduce myself, for those who don't know me, I'm Fiona and I'm an admin for the 11 Plus Journey Facebook group. I work part-time as a lawyer for a media and entertainment company in London, and I also run Mills Tutoring. I've been helping children prepare for 11 plus assessments for independent and grammar schools for about the past 10 years. I've also recently started Little Lawyers. This is an 11 plus enrichment course to help with 11 plus interviews, the writing sections of 11 plus exams, and to build confidence, improve speaking, negotiating, and reasoned thinking. I actually went through the 11 plus process myself and completed 11 plus assessments and interviews for a few different schools. So I do know exactly how it feels. And as an adult, I went through the graduate recruitment assessment and interview process at various law firms. I've interviewed at law firms around the world. And I've also more recently been on the other side of the recruitment process. I've been interviewing and setting assessments for trainee solicitors and more junior lawyers when my team has been looking to recruit. And I've actually been really surprised at the similarities when giving advice to my 11 plus students who are preparing for interviews. And when I'm giving feedback to my team at work after interviewing a junior lawyer, there are quite a lot of similar things that keep coming up. So this live really is to explain and emphasise that regular nurturing of various life skills from a really young age will help with 11 plus assessments, but will also help with obtaining jobs as an adult and just also generally with kind of being a successful and happy adult. So I'm just going to share my screen so that you can see my slides. Okay, so what I'm going to be going through, I'm firstly going to talk about what you really mean when you say you want your child to pass the 11 plus. I'm going to talk about the skills required for the 11 plus exams and interviews, the skills that are required to be a good lawyer, because obviously that's something that I know about, how to develop the skills that can help with 11 plus interviews and assessments, how skills developed for the 11 plus assessments and interviews can help secure top jobs later in life, how skills developed for the 11 plus assessments can make adult life easier. And then I'll talk really quickly at the end about my Little Lawyers course. So first of all, what you really mean when you say you want your child to pass the 11 plus. So I think it's really important to always think about the overall aim. So it's quite easy to get wrapped up in the entry requirements for individual schools, but it's important to think about why you want your child to go to a particular school. And for pretty much all parents, is to ensure that their child leaves school with lots of opportunities, that their child becomes a happy, confident and successful adult and is kind of well equipped to go into the adult world. And I think it's important to remember that at every school, no matter which school your child goes to, there are always going to be children who thrive, who do well in exams and go on to have very successful careers. However, even at schools that are right at the top of the league tables, there will be children who don't reach their potential. So passing the 11 plus really isn't the end goal. And you need to think about, why you're putting your child forward for the 11 plus in the first place. So the skills required for the 11 plus exams and interviews. So I think the top one is an obvious one. So knowledge. I think that's the first thing that parents think about when they're preparing their child for the 11+ exams. I think they buy books, they might get a tutor, they will do lots and lots of practice, all to improve their child's knowledge. And obviously, although this is a key one, I actually don't think it's necessarily the most important one. I think all the others are just as important. Determination, this is a big one. Often some of the papers are really quite difficult, and I've shown some questions to lawyers before and they're like, I don't think I could answer that question for some of the top schools. So, they do require a lot of practice, often for quite a long time. So, some children are practicing for a year, 2 years, sometimes even 3 years, very, very regularly. And they have to really, really want to do it to keep practicing for that length of time. Hard work, they need to be prepared to put in the hours. It's not something you can just prepare for last minute. So hard work is a really, really key one. Perseverance, when something's difficult or when they get questions wrong, they need to keep persevering. I think particularly when you start doing maybe past exam papers, they can be a bit surprised at how difficult they are. So, they have to kind of work through their problem areas and the things that they find more challenging. Resilience, I've had lots of students who've done a mock exam that hasn't done very well, or they haven't received a place at their chosen school and they get a bit despondent, but they need the ability to pick themselves up and try harder so that they can keep going. Attention to detail, this is a big one in exams, so not kind of being quite lax, but always checking their work, being able to spot their errors and correct their own mistakes. Confidence, they need to feel like they can succeed and not get flustered in an exam and interviews. And in interviews, they need to be able to portray themselves as confident, even if they're feeling a little bit nervous. And that does take practice. Empathy. In interviews, it's really important that they're able to put themselves in the interviewer's shoes, understand what the interviewer is trying to get from them. Sometimes the questions, can require them to think, and maybe they're not really sure what the interviewer wants from them. But I think, if they can kind of empathize with what the purpose of the interview, and it's to get to know them a little bit better, then they will find that a little bit easier. It's also important in comprehensions to be able to put themselves in the shoes of the characters, to be able, so they can answer questions about the characters' personalities and feelings. And those questions do often come up, particularly towards the end of comprehension exams. The ability to articulate themselves. So in interviews, it's really key that they can express themselves in a clear and concise way. In exams, they obviously need to be able to express themselves in a written form in a clear and concise way. So the skills required to be a good lawyer. These are exactly the same as the skills required for the 11+ exams and interviews. Obviously, they're a bit more advanced, but it's the same sorts of things that you need to be good at. So knowledge, this is an obvious one. We need to know the law. That's what law school's for and what continued training is for. Determination. The top jobs aren't easy to get into, and even when you get there, they do require a lot of hard work. When you apply for graduate schemes, there are often lots of applicants per place. I think when I got into my training contract, and the training contract is what you need once you've been to law school to qualify as a lawyer, you need to do a 2-year training contract. I think there were about 2,000 applicants for 16 places. I think there's probably more than that now because it's getting more and more competitive. So you have to really, really want it. You have to be very determined. Hard work, you need to be prepared to put in the hours. The top jobs often pay well, but they do expect a lot. Clients can be demanding, and you need to put in a lot of work. Perseverance. Even the very best candidates often go through lots of different assessment centres, lots of interviews before they obtain a place, whether it's for a law firm, whether it's an investment bank, whether it's an accounting firm. If it's the graduate recruitment process, it's quite arduous, and there's lots of hoops to jump through, and you just have to keep trying. Some people will have to apply for 10, 20, 30. I've known people that have applied for up to 100 places before they've managed to get their role. Resilience is very likely to receive several rejections. Even the top candidates who've got really good grades, have got lots of experience, have done lots of practice, they still probably will receive some rejections. They're likely to make mistakes and be told about them. When you go into a graduate job, you get lots of red pen all over your work, and you just have to learn from it and move on. Attention to detail. It's really, really key in top jobs to not make mistakes in your work. Spelling, punctuation, grammar, these are all things that are tested in the 11+, but it really is essential. I recently set a task to assess some junior lawyers that we were recruiting for a junior lawyer, and I set an assessment, and there was an incorrect apostrophe, and I said I just don't think they're good enough to do the role. So it's something that I will pick up on in my students who I'm doing 11+ prep with, but it's still something that when you're an adult, people also pick up on, and it's really important. Confidence. When you're an adult, you need to feel like you're able to speak to people more senior in your job. You need to be able to speak to clients. You need to be able to present, be confident on the phone in meetings. Empathy. You need to be able to understand the priorities of the others that you're working with and your clients, and adjust what you're doing accordingly. The ability to articulate yourself. You need to be able to express yourself in a clear and concise way when advising clients, in emails and reports, in meetings and on the phone. And these are all skills that obviously you'll hopefully be working on with your child in the preparation for 11+, so maybe year 4, 5, 6. But it's something that your child will be hopefully developing over the course of school and university, so that when they go into the adult world, it's something that they feel confident with all those skills. So how to develop these skills that can help with 11+ interviews and assessments. So the first thing is, I think it's really important to discuss what skills are necessary and how to develop them with your child. I think sometimes parents can, read lots, look at, the research, talk to lots of people about it, and think about, oh, how can I get my child to do that, without actually just explicitly saying it to them. This is what I think you need to get better at. This is what we need to work on together. And if you're honest and you kind of work with your child to decide how you can develop those skills, they're likely to respond a lot better than if you are kind of doing it secretly. The next thing is to encourage independence. So try not to do everything for your child. Let them make decisions where it's appropriate to do so. More independence often means more confidence. I found that if a child, say, has a parent who jumps in very quickly, so I teach online, so if I'm teaching online and they minimize something or something goes wrong, if their parent comes over immediately before they've had a chance to try and work it out for themselves, they won't grow in confidence. Whereas if they have a go at doing it themselves, and often I can direct them how to do it, then they'll think, oh, I didn't know how to do that, but now I do, and that will really improve their confidence. The next thing is to give them some control. If your child has control over when and where they do their 11+ preparation, and they have some input into what will help them, they are more likely to do it without making a fuss. So I think always including your child in those sorts of decisions and making them feel like they do have some control over it. The next one is a really key one, particularly for interviews, engaging in discussions about the world, the news, what you're reading, real life situations that you're in, what you've been doing at work. I think giving your child that information really helps with their knowledge, their empathy, and improving how articulate they are. I think sometimes you can think that something's quite obvious as an adult, but your child has never been in that situation. So I think it's really important, where it's appropriate, to tell your child about your problems or what's been going on, or, the things at work that are a bit stressful or what's difficult. Asking your child to summarize what they've read, situations and problems in a clear and concise way. So this is something that I often do with my students. If, say, for example, we're working on a comprehension, I will get them to read the comprehension, and then I'll go off it and I'll say, okay, can you summarize to me in 2 sentences what that was about? And I think that's really important, because sometimes children everyone really, adults do it a lot, is just waffle, and they don't say the point in the most clear and concise way. So I think we want to be able to get children to be able to summarize in a short way. The next one is asking your child to make observations and point out details. So you can do this in, all different things that you do, whether you're out and about, whether you are doing an activity, whether you're cleaning. Try and get them to observe things and point out something, point out a detail. And I think that really helps with getting them to just pay more attention to detail generally. The next one is discussing and difficulties and failures in your life. So I kind of said this earlier about how I think it encourages your child to be more empathetic. But I think it comes into my last point here about encouraging a growth mindset, that failure is okay. Nothing ever goes completely to plan in everyone's life. We all have things that have happened that haven't gone to plan. And I think showing your child, what has happened in your life that hasn't gone to plan makes it okay for them to fail. And this will encourage them to try new things. So we really want to encourage their efforts rather than their results, and understand that things won't always go to plan. I recently started 11 plus prep with a new student, and he is quite lacking in confidence, particularly in creative writing. And I set a task for him in one of the first couple of sessions. It was just a description task. I said, can you write me a couple of paragraphs? He went away, and his mum sent me an email a few days later and said he found it very, very difficult, and he was quite upset because he said, I can't do it. I don't have a very good imagination. I don't know what to write. So when he came back, I spoke to him about what a growth mindset is, explained it to him, and said that the reason you're having tuition is because I'm here to help you, and all I want is for you to give it a go. And it really doesn't matter if you come back and what you think you've written isn't the best thing that anyone's ever written. I don't expect that. All I want is for you to give it a go, and then I will help you to make it better. So I think it's really important to encourage efforts rather than results. And then when things don't go right, the child will think, okay, all I need to do is I need to keep working at it, and I need to just keep trying. Right, the next one is how skills developed for the 11 plus assessments and interviews can help secure top jobs later in life. So building confidence takes time. Your child needs to get used to putting themselves outside of their comfort zone, trying lots of things, failing and trying again. It's not something that you're not born with confidence. So I think it's really, really just trying to encourage your child to try lots of different things. Assessment centres at graduate level have a lot of similarities to 11 plus assessments. So for example, in law, they recruit 2 years in advance. So often when you're at university, you'll be looking at jobs before you've even gone to law school. So, you don't need a law degree to apply to be a lawyer, because you can do a degree in anything and then you can go to law school. And so the assessment centres actually don't test your legal knowledge. They're just more about kind of seeing what kind of person you are and how you work. So there are often written exercises, which can be very, very similar to some 11 plus type exercises. I remember doing one where I think it was a letter, and I had to correct the punctuation. I had to correct the spelling. It was just about kind of checking your attention to detail. It's just important to be able to be clear and concise. So, when your child is practicing for doing their letter writing, doing their creative writing, just making sure that they're very, very clear and they're concise with what they're saying. Often for graduate recruitment exercises, there's a panel interview. So there might be 2 or 3 people interviewing you. They ask about your interests and experiences. So very, very similar to 11 plus interviews. It's competency based. So what they'll do is they'll ask, give me an example of a time where you led a team, or give me an example of a time where something went wrong and you had to resolve the problem. So the more things you've done and the more things that you've tried, the easier it is to answer those questions. And the same really goes for 11 plus interviews. If you've got lots of interests and you've got lots of experiences, no matter what they ask, you're going to have an example of a time where, something's happened to you that's very similar to that. A group exercise. So this is very common. And actually, I've noticed recently that, so a lot of 11 plus interviews or assessment processes do have a group exercise. And this kind of assess how you work with other people, if you can listen, that you contribute, but you're not overshadowing other people, that you're able to empathise with other people and say the appropriate things in response to other people's suggestions. And then the last thing is a presentation. And I've definitely helped some of my students decide what they're going to do their presentation on when they've had 11 plus interviews. And really the key here when you're presenting is, being confident, being clear, and being concise. So when I did, for the firm that I actually ended up training with, I had a presentation that I had to do. I had to do a presentation before my interview, and I did that on my own in front of the panel that were interviewing me. And then I think after the group exercise, I had to do a group presentation. Right, how the skills developed for the 11 plus assessments can make adult life easier. So I think the key one, as I've mentioned quite a few times, is confidence. So trying to solve problems. I recently had a case where a few months ago, I was a victim of fraud. Someone managed to hack into my bank account and make 2 quite significant transactions out of my bank account. And when I alerted the bank, they said that they weren't going to pay me back. I was obviously outraged. And so I reviewed the legislation, I reviewed the terms and conditions, I reviewed the guidelines, and I wrote a letter to the bank. And within 2 weeks, I had my money back. But most people probably wouldn't do that. They wouldn't have the confidence to, be able to review the legislation, be able to review the terms and conditions. And obviously I'm a lawyer, so I've got that benefits me massively. But I think the key thing is to just be confident that even if, a company writes you a letter and says, there's no way we're going to do this, and they set out their reasons, that you can question it and you have the confidence to write back to them or give them a call to question that and to try and put your point forwards. And the next one is going for jobs that are a bit of a stretch. So, we want our children to reach their potential, and often that involves putting yourselves out there for things that maybe you're not 100% qualified to do. So if you read a job description and you can do 50% of the things on there, you should apply for the job, because you might get it, even if it's a bit of a stretch. So I think that's really, really important, to give children the confidence to go for things, even if, they might not get them. And the worst thing that will happen is that they don't get them. The confidence to try new things, so to travel, to do things on their own. So when I was 19, I went away for the first time. I went to work at a summer camp in the US, and it was one of the best things I ever did. I absolutely loved it. I learned that I love teaching children, and it's probably one of the reasons why I'm a tutor today. But it was really nerve-wracking because I had never gone abroad by myself. I didn't know anyone. I was going for, I think, about 2 or 3 months. And, it was one of the best things I ever did. So I think trying to get your child to put themselves out there. And, since then I've moved abroad. I've been to Singapore, lived there, to Australia, and both times I didn't really know anyone. I've traveled around the world, and I think it just really, really helps with confidence generally. If you do lots of things and you realize, that your life can become so much more enriched by doing lots of things by yourself, and you can do things even when you think maybe you can't. The ability to stand up for oneself. So to be able to ask for a pay rise, to be able to ask for a promotion. And I think the really, really key one is to be able to set boundaries and say no, both in your personal life and in your professional life. I think that really is the key to making sure you're only doing things that, are really important and, you really care about, and saying no to the things that aren't so important. So the last thing that I just wanted to quickly talk about is my new course called Little Lawyers. This is an 11 plus enrichment course to help with 11 plus interviews, the writing sections of 11 plus exams, and to build confidence, improve speaking, negotiating, and reasoned thinking. It's a 6-session online course to empower children with the skills to advocate for themselves, know their rights and responsibilities, and stand up for themselves and what they believe in. I'm going to have a maximum of 6 students per course, so it will be very interactive. And I'm currently running the course for children who are in year 5 and year 6. I've specifically designed the course so it's suitable for introverted children and extroverted children, those who like public speaking, maybe those that are a little bit quieter. I was quite shy as a child, and I think if I said to anyone, oh, I want to be a lawyer, I think they would have said, you'll never be a lawyer. And I actually think a lot of lawyers are quite introverted. So all that I require for this course is an open and positive attitude, an interest in the world, and an eagerness to learn. So if your child is in 5 or 6 and you're interested in hearing more about my Little Lawyers course or signing up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a MailChimp link below so that you can click on it and then be added to the mailing list. So after the session, I will just add the link for you. You can also follow my Instagram page at Little Lawyers UK, where I post insights into my everyday life as a lawyer and as a tutor. And I post tips on how to develop the skills that I'm teaching in my Little Lawyers course, and some of the ones that I've spoken about above. I post about those quite regularly. So thank you so much for listening, and thanks Saba for letting me do this video, and everyone for joining. Please do contact me if you've got any further questions. You can put them in the chat. I'm happy to answer questions now if you've got any. So you can comment below or just contact me on any of the below methods. So on my Instagram or on my website. You can follow my tutoring page on Facebook. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I post quite a bit on LinkedIn, and then my email address is also there. So if you've not got any questions, I just wanted to leave you with a final quote, which I read quite recently and I really liked, and I thought it was very appropriate for what I was talking about today, which is: plan new achievements and set about achieving them. Failure and disappointment simply don't matter. Go ahead with your dreaming. Let your enthusiasm run away with you. You were made to rise and soar and come down to earth with a bump and rise and soar again. If you accomplish nothing else, you'll have kept the rot and the rust away. Which is a success you plan? Are you to play safe for the rest of your life, or are you to adventure? You must make a choice and make it early, and having made it, you must abide by it. So thank you so much for joining. If you've got any questions, please do put them in the comments, and I will put my MailChimp there so that you can sign up to hear more about the Little Lawyers course. Thank you.